Hello friends, I'm going to do another tarot and oracle reading today for you. I'm going to use the Light Seers Tarot and then the Roots and Wings Oracle deck. I also wanted to talk a little bit about my new sweater that I got. So my family, me and my husband, we went to visit his grandma in New Mexico, and she lives near where the Smokey Bear Museum is. And so we got to go on the tour. I'd obviously heard of Smokey Bear before. I actually was calling him Smokey the Bear and then found out that that's not what it's called. But then whenever you walked around in the museum, there were a bunch of posters and comic books and stuff that said Smokey the Bear. So it was pretty funny to see that and be like, that's where people get the idea from, because apparently in New Mexico it is not that. It is Smokey Bear. But something that was kind of funny was that the pictures up on the walls were, a lot of them were drawn by kids, and it was like different competitions and stuff for Smokey Bear. And what a lot of kids drew, which I think is a great like concept piece, but it was also just like, I don't know, kind of funny, is like, you know, it was like, it would be a picture of Smokey and then the forest burning through his eyes. And like, I love that the kids were able to think of things from that perspective, but it was just so morbid to have up on the walls and to know that like a kid drew that. But also, I love that children have amazing empathy skills and they can understand and relate to things that a lot of adults struggle with, because they've learned over time to shut off their emotions rather than like be able to be open to them and think about them objectively like a lot of children do. So that's it for my introduction. I'm going to pull some tarot cards for the collective for us, and let's see what comes out, and then we'll do a little bit of an oracle pull. Some of you might also be wondering why I don't just do more short form content instead of doing these longer videos, but the thing is that I like doing the longer videos. And I've kind of given up on the idea that I'm going to be like any sort of influencer, because like just putting in all that time and effort into editing things to look a certain way for like an aesthetic or whatever is just not something I really like genuinely find joy in. Like I could do it, but it's just not something that I love, and I feel like that type of content is for people and what they love. I also kind of hate being perceived, so the idea of a bunch of people, like especially posts going viral, like as soon as the comments start going off too much, I switch it to friends only, because I just cannot stand the idea of people seeing my content and being mean to me. But I mean, it happens, of course, and I can brush it off when it does, but overall it's like I just don't really want that much attention. So the idea of actually being an influencer or actually being like a really well-known best-selling author, two things that like in concept I would like, but realistically it's just too scary. But anyways, these cards will not come out. Give me 1 second. Okay, what popped out first for this reading is Three of Wands reversed, which tells me that there's not a solid foundation for something that you're trying to accomplish right now. There's like these really big like goals that you might have, or maybe like there's a really long-term goal that you want to achieve, but it just feels like you just don't have those foundational steps to make it happen. It might even reflect a little bit of like what I was just talking about. Like it's like some of these things would be nice in theory, but realistically a lot of people who make it as influencers have some sort of other thing that helps them in some way that like I don't have that same access to, whatever it is, even if it might be like not being chronically ill, because that's something I do suffer with and have issues with. So there's something in your life that you definitely like do not have that foundational start to, you know, start implementing like a change or big significant difference in your life. The other two cards that popped out was very interesting because it was the Hanged Man, which we got yesterday or the other day, but we got it reversed. So this tells me that maybe you are thinking a little bit more about this lack of foundation that you have, and maybe you are thinking a little bit more about like thinking outside the box, or like challenging your beliefs or something like that. Like you really are starting to get into this aspect of like you want things to be different. So maybe you were on a certain path, but now you're realizing that's not exactly what you want, or that's not what you think will make you happy. So now there's this aspect of like, okay, well, what can I do instead? Like you're seeing things from a different perspective now and not looking at life the same way you were before. I have the Wheel reversed here. This card also came out the other day, but it was right side up, which told me that what was happening was part of your destiny. That reading in particular was about toxic and destructive relationships with people who we have like a karmic tie to, and they're meant to teach us some sort of lesson about life, right? So this Wheel reversed tells me that I think that you're taking a break a little bit from that aspect and not thinking so much about like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? What's my purpose? I think that you're starting to think a little bit more about like, what do I have right now? Especially whenever you don't have this foundation to get started. with like what it is that you've been thinking you wanted in your life. Like you're just kind of like, I don't think that I have that to keep going. You know what I mean? I think a lot of millennials have dealt with this in general whenever it comes to like, you know, the dream was to like get married, have kids, buy a house, right? Not everybody had that same dream, but it's kind of like what we generally think life is about, right? And then kind of like growing up and realizing like, oh, the system is literally set up to where like people can't do that stuff anymore. People can't afford homes or can't afford this or that. And the only way that they can is if like they have some sort of wealth, like some sort of connection to somebody who can help them achieve these things, you know? And so I think that you're focusing a lot less on what's sort of like expected of you in this life, or maybe what you thought you were guaranteed to have or something like that. I feel like that is being kind of like stripped away in this moment as you're thinking about things from a new perspective. So I think also the universe is kind of like recalibrating on this as well. So give it time to adjust to like how you're adjusting, you know? There's so many different paths ahead of us. Like that's why I don't really like doing predictions, because there's so many alternative paths that we could take. So for us not having this foundation, it means that maybe something we previously were aspiring to have happen just isn't really possible anymore, you know? I think also sometimes the window of opportunity can close, you know what I mean? And you hear this a lot in astrology as well. It's like, while this transit is going on, this gives you the energy to kind of like start this specific thing. But then if you don't end up setting the right tools and laying down the right foundation for it, it doesn't end up coming out to, doesn't end up becoming your destiny anymore, you know? That's why they say like astrology is not like a just done thing. It's more of like an interpretation of like things that could happen, you know what I mean? And so I think for a lot of us, we're in this like shifting change, and there are a lot of planets that have been in a particular sign for years that are shifting now. So I think a lot of people, their perspectives in general are changing, and they're being forced to see things from a new perspective and kind of like make the decisions of like what they want to do moving forward. I'm going to pull some oracle cards, so we're going to see how it'll add to this reading. This is interesting, but for the Three of Wands, the card that I got with it is the Sun, which for me means like positive days are coming. The Sun is always usually a good card, no matter like what deck you're using. So the card for me usually means like the sun is coming out, like these days of depression are going to like, you know, pass us and things like that. So I think that this like where you feel as if like you don't have the steps to do something, it means that it's just not happening yet, but it will happen for you. So just give yourself patience and don't get frustrated with the fact that like it hasn't happened already. I have duality here, and it's with the Hanged Man. And so this tells me that there are definitely like multiple sides to something that you need to solve within your own life. It could also mean working with other people to solve this issue as well, but I think that you might have been unbalanced. I have been getting a reading for the collective a few times about people being imbalanced, or people pleasing, or like rejecting parts of themselves so that they can fit into what other people want them to be or have or whatever. So I think that you might need to realize that there are multiple sides to yourself and kind of like accept those sides. Like you're not the perfect little worker bee, and that's okay. You shouldn't have to be. Like your value is not in how much you are helpful to other people or how much other people can use you. Like that's not where your value comes in. And then the Wheel of Reversed here we have with the Father card. And so I think a lot of us have to look at our father wound. We can also kind of maybe look at the planet Saturn right now. And Saturn has shifted into Aries. So how I was saying that a lot of planets are shifting, I think it's in Aries right now. It could be back in Pisces because it's going to do a retrograde and then it's going to whatever. But for the most part, overall, generally, it is shifting and transitioning into Aries, and it's going to be in Aries for a few years. So whenever we think about Saturn and Aries, we are moving away from Pisces, where it might have been a little bit more like, you know, being in our thoughts, not really like being able to make anything happen, like really dreaming up and thinking about like what we want our future to look like, a lot of like being lost, a lot of like just not being able to set up like what we want the next steps to be. And now that it's in Aries, we do have that like spark and that energy and that fire energy to like get something started. I think also we have to remember to be disciplined with ourselves and to follow through on what we're supposed to be doing. Let's not think of this as deadbeat dad. Let's think of this as idealistic dad, right? Who we expect a father to be in our lives is someone that we want to lead us, right? It's somebody that we want to have compassion for us. It's somebody that we want who will give us good advice. It's somebody that we can rely on. So I think that we really need to like think about those aspects of our lives as we're shifting into like the next phase of what is destined for us. Because I think for a lot of people, it's scattered. There's a lot of different paths that we can go as a collective, and then also like on a personal level. There's a lot of different paths that we can go. So while you're kind of like, building your foundation of what you want your future to look like, figuring out what that path might be, maybe have a little bit more discipline with yourself, be a little bit more realistic, think of things as like a project you want to solve, and kind of like put those aspects together and kind of like representing like what would be like a positive father figure within your own life. We talk so much about mother figures and mothering ourselves and mother nature and all those things, but now's a little bit of time to think about like the father, fathering ourselves, fathering society too, right? Like that's a big missing piece we see across the board, is not very many father figures right now. So that's just something to think about. Okay, if you liked this video, if you liked this reading, please interact in some way or share it with somebody who you think would want to watch it, or give me a follow if you don't follow me already for more content like this. I hope that it resonated with you, and I will see you next time.